I didn't find the room. I don't think that's the right word anymore. Rooms are found. This revealed itself, or worse, revealed me to it. It started like a glitch, a drift spike during a REM scan. Routine stuff. I was running diagnostics on trace fragmentation when I saw a shift in the live grid, something too symmetrical, too perfect to be a coding error, but too quiet to have been built by a person. The system timestamped the anomaly at 3:11:42, precisely when Wing B reported a minor sync loss. I cross-referenced floor plans. At first glance, there was nothing. Then it blinked. Just once, a new rectangular space appeared on sublevel B3, tucked behind an archive block we hadn't accessed in over 6 years. The system labeled it automatically. R0, unmapped, no entry logs, no structural ID, no thermal data, and worst of all, no door, just a shape on the map, like the system was dreaming of a room it hadn't finished rendering yet. I pinged it out of protocol. Response time, 0.3 seconds. That's too fast for a ghost trace. It wasn't a glitch. It was listening. I asked the interface for history, version control, system edits, structural approvals. Nothing. As if the room had written itself in negative space, I flagged it manually. Left a note, unmapped anomaly, no anchor, possible internal echo. 10 minutes later, the note disappeared. Not erased, overwritten by null. And then my own credentials logged a session I never opened. 03:19:17, terminal 6B, origin point, R0. Accessed by a user ID that didn't exist before that moment. I froze. Requested access rollback. Denied. I didn't know what that meant until the next morning. Subject 13D, who had completed 3 full loop observations, stable, lucid, compliant, was no longer in his room. His file existed. His trace signature did not. There were no logs of exit, no EEG dropout, no final scan. He was absent. I ran trace restoration. Nothing. The security feed still showed room 214 bed, lights, timestamp. But when I replayed the footage, the face wasn't blurred. It was missing. The sound was gone. Even the audio line was flat, as if the space had forgotten it was supposed to record. Frame by frame, 13D's presence had been erased, not just from the image, but from the idea of the image, as if someone had reached into the concept of surveillance and pulled him out. I went back to the system grid. R0 was still there. This time, it pulsed on its own once every 4 seconds. I opened a hidden admin layer and asked the AI to list all active rooms. It lit up each one in sequence. Green, confirmed, green, confirmed, until it reached R0. It flickered. Yellow, then dimmed, and then on its own, the system printed one word on the center display. Not in alert red, not in warning yellow, just white, plain, neutral, calm, receiving. I didn't ask for clearance because I knew what they would say, not because it was dangerous, not because it was restricted, but because no one would believe me. No one ever does when the system starts making decisions on its own. So I used the shaft, the one that ran behind the elevator core, never used, never lit. The stairs covered in dust, so fine it felt like walking through powdered memory. I descended slower than necessary, as if giving the building time to change its mind. It didn't. At the bottom, I expected a wall. Instead, I found a hallway. Narrow, unlabeled, lights buzzing not with light, but with wrongness, a faint, dissonant pitch that pulsed behind the ears instead of in them. I passed one reader. My badge blinked red. I passed another. It didn't blink at all. The air pressed closer. The floor tiles grew warmer. That's when I saw it. A door that didn't match the rest of Eden Wake. Wood, aged like breath held too long. Faded green, brass knob. No scanner, no lock. Just a single sticker above the frame. Its ink warped like something had tried to remember how to type. Do not remember. I turned the knob. It gave too easily, like it had been opened many times before, and none of those times were by me. Or maybe all of them were. There was no sound, no cold, just entry, and inside, stillness. A square room, too symmetrical to be accidental. Padded walls, 5 chairs, each facing inward like they had been in the middle of a sentence, no one finished. On each, a single object, a watch that still ticked, glasses too clean to be forgotten, a notebook torn in half mid-sentence, a child's sock still damp, and a black cassette tape marked in pencil last. I didn't touch any of it. I didn't have to. Something touched me instead, not my skin, not my thoughts, but the space between them. Like a breath I never took filled my chest. I blinked. When my eyes opened, the room hadn't changed. But I wasn't alone anymore. A woman sat in the corner, crying not loudly, not broken, but quietly, as if the crying was a behavior she had remembered, not something she felt. I knew her name, Nora. I didn't know why. But I knew she hated elevators and once tried to burn her own file during a REM reset. Across the chairs, a man walked in circles. Jewels, his recorder hung around his neck, blinking red, though no one had pressed record. He murmured numbers under his breath. 3, 7, 11, corridor B4, spike window 2. I whispered with him, not by choice, but because my mouth moved first. I had never spoken those words before, but they had waited for me anyway. I tried to leave. My legs didn't move, not because of fear, but because they weren't mine anymore. They belonged to someone who had once sat here, long enough for the room to learn their timing. I understood then. I wasn't accessing the memory. I was finishing it. I don't remember the moment I stopped being myself. There was no jolt, no snap, no clear tear in the thread. It was gentler than forgetting, like drifting mid-thought and waking up inside something that had already decided what I was going to think next. The world didn't change, I did, slowly, quietly. I was walking through a hallway I'd never seen before, but I knew the number on the door before it even came into view. 114B. It pulsed behind my ribs before it appeared. Jules had whispered that number once, a voice I had no right to remember. He wasn't in the system anymore. No digital record. No traceable REM. Just a residual murmur etched in the bones of a building that had tried and failed to forget. They were all gone. Not wiped, not archived. Absorbed. Swallowed into something too large to delete, too fragile to expose. The hallway was too perfect. No flicker. No hum. Eden Wake only rendered perfection when it was about to collapse the loop. The cleaner the edge, the nearer the end. I brushed my fingers along the wall and felt heat. Not mine. A recent warmth, left behind like a ghost too disciplined to haunt. I heard breathing 3 steps behind. Precise. Measured. Not mine. Not present. Remembered. I didn't turn. Couldn't. The system doesn't allow backward motion once a trace has been queued for overwrite. Looking back risks recognition. And recognition is fatal to containment. So I walked, entered room 114, be the same layout. Square. 5 chairs. Objects still in place. Still looped. Still waiting. But there was a 6th chair now. One I hadn't seen. One that hadn't existed. And someone was sitting in it. Still, facing away. Breathing with my lungs at my pace exactly. I stepped closer, and in that moment I didn't need confirmation. I knew he was me, or the version of me that found this room first, or last, or forever ago. Not a twin, not a reflection, just the part of me that didn't survive. His head turned, just enough to let breath escape, not speech, but the residue of meaning too old to be voiced. And from that open mouth came words that weren't spoken. They were released. Once you enter a memory that wasn't recorded, there's no one left to remember you. I tried to leave. I turned toward the door that was never there, the one I must have entered through. But the wall had already sealed behind me like it had never opened. The 6th chair was now empty. The objects were gone. The air had stilled in a way that no room should allow, not silence, but cessation, as if the system had suspended time until it could decide what to do with me. I reached for the scanner on my belt. It wasn't there. It never had been. I looked at my hands. They were clean, but not in a sterile way, more like freshly written code that had never been printed. The screen on the far wall blinked. No interface. Just white text on black. Echo confirmed. Subject no longer categorized as external. I opened my mouth to object, but I couldn't remember what I was objecting to. I knew who I was. I thought I did. I said my name out loud. The room didn't react. No acknowledgement. Just a new message. Label, memory construct, loop host status. Passive gate access, denied. I ran to the corner. Hit the wall. It didn't move. It didn't resist. It just ignored me. like I was never meant to interact with the environment again. And then the lights shifted, not brighter, not dimmer, just realigned, like the room was preparing for its next session. A hum started, not electrical, biological, like someone else was dreaming through me. The chair I had sat in began to fade, not visually, but structurally, like it was being rewritten as data. And then I saw it, a small label on the wall I hadn't noticed before, etched so faint it only became visible once the system recognized I could no longer leave. It said, R0, composite archive accessed by U retention, indefinite. I knelt down, not in surrender, but because that was what the system had logged I would do next. My knees hit the floor before I felt them. My breathing adjusted to a rhythm I didn't set, and just before everything went quiet, I felt one final pulse, familiar, intimate, and not mine. It whispered, "You were never here to find the room. You were here to become it."